In 2013, Target Corporation stood at its peak. More than a retailer, it was a retail titan and a market disruptor. The cheap chic maestro, the store that made bargain hunting feel stylish. With billions in revenue and a fiercely loyal American following, it set its sights on its seemingly easiest conquest, Canada. The plan was not just expansion, it was an invasion. 124 stores opened almost overnight, converting old Zellers locations. The hype was unreal. Canadians tired of crossing the border for their Target fix waited in lines for hours on opening day, expecting a slice of that American retail magic. But just 24 months later, the dream was over. Every single store was shuttered. 17,600 people lost their jobs, and Target wrote off a staggering $7 billion. One of the most catastrophic retail failures in history. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a controlled detonation. This isn't a story of a weak brand. This is the story of how one of the world's smartest retailers, blinded by its own aura, made every single mistake in the book. How corporate arrogance, disguised as confidence, orchestrated its own spectacular downfall. To understand the scale of this failure, you must first understand Target's power. In the US, they had cracked the code. They were the expect more, pay less champions. Their secret? A brilliant integrated supply chain, razor-sharp merchandising, and legendary partnerships with top designers that caused literal shopping frenzies. They weren't just selling goods, they were selling an identity. Expanding into Canada seemed like a geopolitical no-brainer. A similar culture, just across the border, with consumers who were already brand aware and hungry for their products. The strategy, dubbed the Big Bang, was to dominate the market instantly. They acquired the leases of 124 failing Zellers stores for $1.8 billion. The logic was simple: use existing real estate to move at lightning speed and crush local competition before they could even blink. Investors cheered, the media was obsessed. Target Canada wasn't just an expansion, it was a coronation waiting to happen. Leadership projected profitability within a year. But beneath this glittering show of confidence, the foundation wasn't just shaky, it was practically non-existent. The plan focused on the theater of expansion, the storefronts, the marketing, while tragically underestimating the engine room required to make it all work. The first customers who rushed in on opening day found a surreal scene. The iconic red logos were there. The layout felt familiar, but the shelves were hauntingly empty. No stylish home decor, no trendy clothing, just vast red-backed gaps. And next to those gaps, piles of products nobody wanted: winter coats in spring, lawn chairs in February. The problem wasn't demand, it was a supply chain that collapsed before the first door opened. This was the fatal flaw. Target tried to replicate its US success without first replicating its US backbone. In America, Target relied on a few highly automated, all meticulously tuned distribution centers. For Canada, they hastily built 3 new, massively complex centers from scratch, while simultaneously trying to launch 124 stores. The result was chaos. The software didn't talk to the systems. The barcodes were mismatched with the Canadian systems. The workforce was untrained and overwhelmed by the complexity. Trucks got lost, orders were misfiled, and inventory visibility was zero. One infamous story tells of a store receiving 10,000 boxes of a single type of lip balm instead of a balanced assortment. Store managers were left in the dark, having no idea what was coming or when. They couldn't fulfill basic requests. A customer looking for a specific size of jeans would be told by the system it was in stock, while the item was actually lost in a sea of unprocessed containers in a chaotic warehouse. The brand promise of expect more instantly became the soul-crushing reality of find nothing. The first impression was irreversible, and it was one of failure. Empty shelves were an operational disaster. But the next strategic mistake was a profound betrayal of the brand's core promise: the pricing. Canadians are savvy, especially about cross-border shopping. Millions had experienced Target in the US. They expected the famous value. What they found were prices consistently 20 to 30% higher than the US, even after accounting for currency and tariffs. A $19.99 item in Minnesota would be $24.99 or more in Ontario. Why? The operational chaos had a direct cost. Target's famous low-price model was built on the back of its hyper-efficient US system. In the broken, expensive Canadian system, costs for storage, transportation, and waste ballooned. Instead of making a strategic decision to absorb some early losses to win lifelong customer trust, viewing it as a marketing investment, they passed every single extra penny onto the already skeptical customer. The public perception crystallized into a devastating mantra. Target is just another expensive, mediocre Canadian retailer, but with worse selection. The brand's sacred covenant, pay less, was shattered. Bad news spread like wildfire in the digital age. Social media filled with memes and jokes about Target, the store of empty promises. The press, initially fawning, turned ruthless. The expansion narrative became a failure narrative overnight. Traffic didn't just dip, it plummeted. What was supposed to be a joyous market entry turned into a daily, desperate fight for survival against a self-created PR inferno. Back in Minneapolis, Target's leadership shifted from confidence to panic mode. They tried to fix the unfixable, pouring hundreds of millions more into the broken system. A classic case of throwing good money after bad. They changed management, promised improvements, and ran frantic marketing campaigns. But the trust was gone. Canadian shoppers, once eager, had simply moved on. They returned to the reliable, if less glamorous, Walmart, or embraced the rising tide of Amazon, or supported local retailers who could, at the very least, reliably stock their shelves. In January 2015, after a mere 24 months, Target admitted a defeat of historic proportions. They announced the complete liquidation and exit from Canada. It was a corporate bloodbath. The $7 billion in losses wasn't just a number. It evaporated capital, investor confidence, and reputational equity. A tidal wave of fallout hit creditors, from major landlords to small local suppliers who waited months for unpaid invoices, some driven to the brink themselves. Most tragically, 17,600 employees were laid off, often with minimal severance, becoming the forgotten casualties of a war planned in boardrooms thousands of miles away. The empire had not been defeated by a clever competitor. It had tripped over its own untied shoelaces at the starting line and bled out in front of everyone. So, what truly destroyed Target in Canada? It wasn't one bad decision. It was a perfect storm of interconnected corporate arrogance. Arrogance of speed. They believed their brand's momentum was so powerful it could overcome a lack of foundational readiness. They valued the shock and awe of scale over the meticulousness of setup. Arrogance of scale. They assumed their finely tuned US processes could be mindlessly copy-pasted into a new country, with different regulations, logistics networks, and consumer expectations, without building the dedicated infrastructure first. Arrogance of brand love. This was the most critical. They assumed customer loyalty was a pre-installed gift, a given, not a delicate value proposition that needed to be earned and validated with every single store visit and transaction. The greatest, most painful irony, Target's undisputed strengths in the US, its legendary logistics, its value pricing, its cult-like brand hype, became its exact, amplified weaknesses in Canada. Because they were attempting to execute these strengths on top of a fragile, non-existent, and crumbling foundation. The lesson is brutal for any business, large or small. Your brand is not a force field. It does not protect you from operational failure. In fact, the stronger your brand and the higher the expectations, the harder and faster you fall when you fail to deliver on its most basic core promise. Target survived this $7 billion tuition fee for the hardest business lesson of its life. The catastrophe forced a brutal, necessary refocus on its core US market, leading to massive investments in supply chain technology, small format stores, and a revitalized e-commerce strategy, making it stronger today. But the ghost of Canada remains the ultimate case study in retail hubris, a stark warning that in this business, the most important battles aren't won in glamorous marketing campaigns or splashy press releases. They are won and lost daily in the dimly lit aisles of a distribution center, on the hectic loading dock, and on the tiny, truthful price tag. Get those fundamentals wrong, and even a beloved giant can vanish in the blink of an eye. If you want to see more stories of epic corporate successes and failures, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. Keep in touch.